What if one day you woke up and suddenly understood everything? No illusions, no superpowers, just the truth, raw, clear, unavoidable, people, life, consequences, nothing hidden, nothing uncertain. Would that knowledge save you, or would it slowly wear you down? The world looks exactly the same. Same walls, same screen in your hand, same streets outside. But something changes inside you. You see patterns instantly. You understand causes and outcomes. You know how choices unfold before anyone makes them, not because you're gifted, because you know everything. At first, it feels like control. You stop making stupid mistakes. You avoid wasted effort. You know exactly which job leads nowhere, which offer is just words, which risk actually pays off. Life becomes efficient. Others hesitate. You don't. And for a while, it feels like you've cracked the system. But something starts to disappear. Anxiety fades. So does excitement, because excitement needs uncertainty. You already know the result of every conversation, every conflict, every decision. Nothing surprises you anymore. Life becomes quiet. You begin to see people clearly. You clearly. You know when they're sincere and when they're acting. You know who cares and who is simply using you. Words stop mattering. Intentions become obvious. Once you see that level of truth, you can't unlearn it. Trust becomes fragile. You still communicate. You still smile. But you already know which bonds will break which relationships end painfully, and why. So you stop getting attached, because attachment hurts more when you know the ending. Distance feels safer. Then comes the heaviest burden. You know your own future. Not every detail, but the direction. Which dreams succeed, which never will. When life improves, and when it doesn't, motivation changes. Why fight for something when you already know the outcome? Why struggle when the result is fixed? You realize something important. The best moments of your life were never about certainty. They were about hope, trying without guarantees, loving without answers, choosing without knowing the end. Uncertainty wasn't weakness, it was life itself. So what if you could know everything? You might avoid pain, you might avoid mistakes, but you would lose. Surprise curiosity, wonder. Maybe that's the balance. Maybe life isn't meant to be fully understood. Maybe it's meant to be lived, because a life with all the answers no longer asks questions. And without questions, life becomes silent. So let's say you keep going. You don't overthink it. You use what you know. First, money. You don't become greedy. You don't flex. You just make correct decisions. You choose the right job at the right time. You invest early, exit early. You avoid losses. Most people walk straight into nothing extreme, just consistent wins. After a few years, money stops being a problem. Not private jets rich, but free. No stress about bills. No panic about the future. You buy time. With money handled, you notice something. You're calm. While others rush, you wait. While others chase trends, you already know which ones die out. People start asking you for advice. You don't sound smart, you sound accurate. Then comes lifestyle. You don't overwork. You don't burn out. You already know when pushing harder makes sense and when it's pointless. You train your body because you know it pays off. You rest when you know it doesn't matter. Life becomes efficient. Now, people, you don't waste energy anymore. You know who's temporary, who's useful, who's real, dot. You stop trying to impress. You don't chase approval because you already know how everyone sees you. That alone changes your presence. People feel it. Dating becomes simple, not easy, simple. You know when interest is real. You know when it's just attention. You don't play games. You don't overinvest. You choose. You don't rush into relationships that you know won't last. You also do. You travel differently. Not to escape, but to experience what you already know you'll enjoy. No disappointment, no wasted trips. You see places with understanding, not expectation. You still make goals, but now they're realistic. You don't dream blindly. You build slow, controlled, intentional progress feels steady. You stop reacting. You start choosing when something goes wrong. You are not surprised. You already saw it coming. That alone gives you an advantage. Most people never get. You don't panic. You don't rush. You don't overcorrect. You move one step ahead every single time. Money keeps coming, not fast, not reckless. Just steady. You know when to take a risk and when to stay quiet. You don't chase every opportunity because you know which ones are real. That's why people think you are lucky. But you know why? Your confidence changes, not loud, not aggressive, calm. You don't need to prove anything because you already know where you're going. People feel that they trust you faster. They listen more carefully. Not because you talk more, but because you talk only when it matters. In relationships, you don't rush, you don't cling. You let things develop naturally because you know forcing never works. You choose people who add something, not ones who drain you. When something ends, you accept it without bitter. You build routines that actually work. You train because you know your body pays you back. You rest because you know when pushing is pointless. Your days stop feeling chaotic. They start feeling intentional. You notice something unexpected. Life doesn't feel smaller. It feels clearer. You still enjoy things, but you enjoy them without attachment. Success feels clean, not desperate. Failure feels manageable, not personal. People around you still struggle. They argue, they overthink, they burn energy on. You don't feel superior. You feel ready for change, ready for loss, ready for opportunity. And when something finally surprises you, you welcome it. Because even knowing almost everything, you understand one last thing. Life is still worth living when you live it consciously. You stop trying to control everything, even when you can, because control is heavy and awareness is light. You let events unfold, only stepping in when it actually matters. That alone saves years of energy. You start valuing time more than outcomes. Money comes and goes, people arrive and leave, but time once spent never returns. Knowing everything teaches you that faster than anything else. You simplify your life. Less noise, fewer promises, clearer goals. Not because you can't handle more, but because you don't need to. You notice how rare this state is. Most people live reacting. You live anticipating. Most people hope things work out. You know when they will. That difference changes how you walk. How you don't rush happiness. You know, happiness comes in waves and forcing it never works. So you let good moments happen and you let bad ones pass without resistance. At some point, you stop thinking about the ability itself. It becomes background, like vision or breath. You don't wake up thinking, I know everything. You wake up thinking, what matters today? And here is the part no one expects. Even with all this knowledge, you still feel human. You still get tired, still feel attraction, still want me. You don't chase validation because you know how temporary it is. You don't fear failure because you know it's survivable. You don't cling to people because you know connection works best freely. In the end, knowing everything doesn't make life perfect. It makes it navigable. And maybe that is the real advantage. Not power, not control, but clarity. So if you ever wonder what you would really do if you could know everything, you wouldn't try to become a god. You would become calm. And that changes. If this made you think, subscribe and leave a like.